Welcome back to Crime Stories for Sleep, where the shadows hold secrets and the night reveals truths that daylight conceals. Tonight we're walking through empty hallways, abandoned classrooms, and silent office buildings where janitors work alone, cleaning spaces that hold more than just dirt and debris. Tonight, I bring you 5 disturbing true stories from custodial workers who discovered that some messes can never be cleaned. Some buildings never truly empty. And some nights on the job become encounters with the impossible. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and join me as we explore 5 disturbing true janitor horror stories that will make you never want to work alone in an empty building again. Story 1. The third-floor CLSSRO Maria Santos had been working as a night custodian at Roosevelt Elementary School for 8 years. The job suited her schedule perfectly. She could clean the school after hours, while her children were asleep at home with her husband, earning steady income without interfering with her daytime responsibilities as a mother and her children's primary caregiver. Roosevelt Elementary was a typical urban elementary school, built in the 1950s during the post-war educational expansion, and housing about 400 students from kindergarten through 5th grade. The building itself reflected the educational philosophy of its era: solid construction, high ceilings, and wide corridors designed to accommodate large numbers of children moving between classrooms. The classrooms were spacious, with large windows that provided natural light during the day, and each room was equipped with traditional teaching materials: blackboards, wooden desks arranged in neat rows, and bulletin boards displaying student work and educational posters. Maria's shift began at 10 p.m. after all evening activities and parent meetings had concluded. Her routine was methodical and efficient, developed through years of experience and refined to ensure that every area of the school was thoroughly cleaned and ready for the next day. She would start with the cafeteria and kitchen areas, which required the most intensive cleaning due to food service operations. Then she would move through the administrative offices, ensuring that the main office, principal's office, and teacher workrooms were properly maintained. Next, she would clean the gymnasium and library, 2 spaces that saw heavy use during the school day and required careful attention to detail. The gymnasium floor needed special treatment to maintain its surface, and the library required delicate handling of books and educational materials. Finally, she would work floor by floor through the classrooms, starting with kindergarten and 1st grade on the ground floor and moving up through the upper elementary grades on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The building was always quiet at night, filled only with the sounds of heating systems, the occasional settling noise that old buildings make as temperatures fluctuate, and Maria's own footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Maria had learned to appreciate the peaceful atmosphere of the school at night. It gave her time to think, to reflect on her own children's education, and to take pride in maintaining a space where young minds were nurtured and developed. Maria knew the school's history and understood its role in the community. Roosevelt Elementary had served generations of families, many of whom had attended the school as children and were now sending their own children to the same classrooms where they had learned to read, write, and develop the foundation skills that would carry them through their educational journey. Teaching staff at Roosevelt was a mixture of experienced educators who had devoted their careers to elementary education and younger teachers who brought fresh energy and new ideas to the classroom. Maria had developed friendly relationships with many of the teachers, who often stayed late to prepare lessons or work with students who needed extra help. On the night of March 15th, Maria encountered something in a 3rd floor classroom that challenged everything she thought she knew about the school where she worked. The dedication of educators and the persistence of the teaching mission beyond the normal boundaries of life and employment. Maria was cleaning the 3rd floor, which housed the 4th and 5th grade classrooms. She had already finished 3 classrooms and was approaching room 308 when she heard something unusual. The sound of children's voices coming from inside the classroom. This was concerning because the building should have been completely empty, and there was no explanation for how children could have gotten into a locked classroom. Maria approached the door carefully and peered through the small window. Inside room 308, she could see approximately 15 children sitting at their desks, apparently engaged in a normal class lesson. A woman who appeared to be their teacher was standing at the front of the room, writing on the blackboard. The scene looked completely normal except for one crucial detail. It was nearly midnight, and the school had been locked and empty for hours. Maria unlocked the classroom door and stepped inside. "Excuse me," she called out. "The school is closed. You need to leave immediately." The teacher turned around and smiled at Maria. She was a woman in her 40s with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing a floral dress that looked like it was from several decades earlier. The children at their desks also turned to look at Maria, and she noticed that their clothing also seemed outdated. The boys wore button-up shirts and slacks. The girls wore dresses with proper shoes. "Oh, hello," the teacher said pleasantly. "I'm Mrs. Henderson. We're just finishing up our evening study session. We'll be done in a few more minutes." Maria was confused. There was no Mrs. Henderson currently teaching at Roosevelt Elementary, and evening study sessions weren't part of the school's programs. More importantly, there was no way that children and the teacher could have gotten into a locked building without triggering security systems. "Ma'am, I don't understand how you got in here. The building has been locked since 6 p.m., and there are no evening programs scheduled." Mrs. Henderson looked puzzled by Maria's question. "We've been holding evening sessions here for years. The children need extra help with their studies, and their parents work late, so this arrangement works perfectly for everyone." Maria looked around the classroom more carefully. The children were working quietly on what appeared to be arithmetic problems, writing with pencils on paper that looked old and yellowed. The textbooks on their desks were clearly from an earlier era, thick, hardbound books with covers that Maria recognized from her own elementary school decades earlier. "What year is this class from?" Maria asked carefully. Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Why, it's 1962, of course. We're preparing for the spring mathematics exam." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. It was currently 2023, and no one had used those old textbooks or taught in that style for decades. She excused herself and immediately called the school principal, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who lived nearby and had given Maria her personal number for emergencies. "Dr. Walsh, this is Maria from Night Custodial. I have a situation in room 308. There's a teacher and about 15 students holding some kind of class session." "Maria, that's impossible. The building has been empty since the PTA meeting ended at 7 p.m. I'm looking right at them. The teacher says her name is Mrs. Henderson and that it's 1962. Dr. Walsh was quiet for a moment. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't approach them again until I arrive." When Dr. Walsh arrived at the school, she found Maria waiting in the main hallway. Together, they approached room 308. The classroom was now empty. No teacher, no students, no textbooks. The room looked exactly as it should, desks arranged in neat rows, modern educational materials on the walls, and nothing to indicate that anyone had been there. But on the blackboard, written in perfect cursive handwriting, was a mathematics lesson that corresponded exactly to the 1962 fourth grade curriculum. The problems were complex arithmetic exercises that were no longer taught at Roosevelt Elementary, presented in the teaching style that had been used 60 years earlier. Dr. Walsh stared at the blackboard for several minutes. "Maria, I need to show you something." She led Maria to the administrative office and pulled out a thick file folder containing historical records about Roosevelt Elementary. "Mrs. Catherine Henderson taught 4th grade at Roosevelt from 1958 to 1963. She was known for holding voluntary evening study sessions for students who needed extra help. According to these records, she died in a car accident in January 1963. But she had been working late at the school that evening, preparing materials for her evening students. Dr. Walsh showed Maria a photograph from the 1962 school yearbook. It was definitely the same woman Maria had encountered in room 308. The evening study sessions ended when Mrs. Henderson died. But according to school legend, some janitors and night security guards have reported seeing her class still meeting occasionally. Maria returned to her custodial duties, but she approached room 308 differently from that night forward. On several subsequent occasions, she heard the sounds of a class in session, children reciting lessons, pencils scratching on paper, the soft voice of Mrs. Henderson providing gentle instruction. Maria learned to simply clean around the classroom when she heard these sounds. Returning later when the phantom class session had ended, she found that Mrs. Henderson's class never left any actual mess to clean up, but they did sometimes leave mathematical problems on the blackboard that reflected the curriculum from 1962. Dr. Walsh eventually researched the evening study program that Mrs. Henderson had run. She discovered that the program had been unofficial. Mrs. Henderson had volunteered her time to help students whose parents worked late shifts and couldn't provide homework assistance. The students who participated were primarily from working-class families where both parents held evening jobs. Mrs. Henderson was dedicated to making sure no child fell behind academically because of their family's work schedule. Dr. Walsh told Maria she believed that education was the key to breaking cycles of poverty, and she was willing to work evenings without pay to ensure that every child had the support they needed. Maria came to see her encounters with Mrs. Henderson's class as a privilege rather than a disturbance. She was witnessing the continuation of educational dedication that transcended death. Mrs. Henderson was still teaching, still helping students who needed extra support, still ensuring that no child was left behind. Other custodial staff were less comfortable with the phantom classroom. Several janitors requested to be transferred to different schools after encountering Mrs. Henderson's evening study sessions. But Maria remained at Roosevelt Elementary for another 5 years, and she always made sure that room 308 was kept in perfect condition for Mrs. Henderson's continuing work. When Maria eventually retired from custodial work, she made a point of visiting Dr. Walsh one last time. "Please make sure that whoever replaces me understands about room 308. Mrs. Henderson is still teaching those children, and they deserve respect and space to continue their studies." Dr. Walsh had established a small memorial plaque outside room 308 that read, "In honor of Mrs. Catherine Henderson, who believed that every child deserves educational support, regardless of circumstances. Teaching continues." The plaque doesn't mention the phantom evening sessions, but it acknowledges Mrs. Henderson's dedication to education. Maria often wondered about the children in Mrs. Henderson's eternal classroom. Were they students who had died young, still trying to complete their education? Were they representations of all the children who needed extra help but couldn't get it? Or were they simply the continuation of Mrs. Henderson's commitment to teaching, manifested in a form that transcended the normal boundaries of life and death? Whatever the explanation, Maria was grateful to have witnessed dedication to education that was so strong it survived death itself. Mrs. Henderson was still teaching, still helping, still ensuring that no child was left behind in their pursuit of knowledge. The story of Mrs. Henderson's continuing evening study sessions became an inspiration to the current teaching staff at Roosevelt Elementary, school and education professionals throughout the school district. Her posthumous dedication to providing extra help for students who needed additional support demonstrated that the best teachers view education as a calling that transcends the normal boundaries of employment and mortality. Current teachers at Roosevelt Elementary often requested access to room 308, hoping to benefit from Mrs. Henderson's continued educational expertise and the atmosphere of dedicated teaching that seemed to permeate the classroom. Several teachers credited their time in room 308 with helping them develop more effective teaching methods and deeper understanding of how to support students from challenging family circumstances. The evening study program that Mrs. Henderson had conducted during her lifetime eventually inspired the school district to establish formal after-school tutoring programs for students whose parents worked evening shifts or couldn't provide academic support at home. These programs, known as the Catherine Henderson Memorial Study Sessions, served hundreds of students each year and provided the kind of educational equity that Mrs. Henderson had pioneered decades earlier. Mrs. Henderson understood that effective education requires meeting students where they are and providing support that addresses their individual circumstances. Dr. Walsh observed, "Her continuing presence in room 308 reminds us that great teaching is about more than delivering curriculum. It's about ensuring that every child has the opportunity to succeed, regardless of their family's work schedule or economic situation." Maria Santos's 8 years of encounters with Mrs. Henderson's Phantom Classroom provided her with insights into the nature of educational dedication and the way that some teachers become so identified with their mission of helping children learn that their commitment survives their physical death. She learned that schools serve as more than just educational buildings. They become repositories of teaching energy and student support that persist beyond the careers of individual educators. Room 308 at Roosevelt Elementary School became known among staff and students as a place of exceptional educational energy and academic support, where struggling students seemed to find extra motivation and teachers discovered innovative approaches to helping children overcome learning challenges. The classroom consistently produced some of the school's highest test scores and most improved student outcomes. As if Mrs. Henderson's teaching expertise continued to benefit everyone who spent time in her classroom. The memorial plaque outside room 308 became a gathering place for teachers, students, and families who wanted to honor Mrs. Henderson's contribution to education and express gratitude for the continuing support that seemed to emanate from her classroom. Current students often left small tokens of appreciation, drawings, thank you notes, or academic achievements that they wanted to share with the teacher who continued to help them succeed. Mrs. Henderson's Phantom Evening Study Sessions represented the persistence of educational mission beyond death, the ongoing commitment of dedicated teachers to ensure that no child is left behind, and the way that exceptional educators continue to serve their students and communities even after their formal teaching careers have ended. For Maria Santos and the other custodial staff at Roosevelt Elementary School, Mrs. Henderson's continuing presence served as a daily reminder that their maintenance work supported a sacred mission of education and child development that deserved the highest levels of care and respect. Story 2. The basement storage. Our own Thomas Wright had been working as a custodian at Mercy General Hospital for 12 years, building a career in healthcare facility maintenance that required specialized knowledge and exceptional attention to detail. Hospital custodial work was fundamentally different from other janitorial positions. The cleaning standards were significantly higher due to strict infection control requirements. The work schedule had to accommodate 24-hour medical operations without interfering with patient care. And the emotional weight of working in a place where people faced life and death situations created unique psychological challenges that not all custodial workers could handle. Thomas had specifically chosen hospital work because he understood the critical importance of maintaining clean, sterile environments in healthcare settings. He had received specialized training in bloodborne pathogen safety, chemical handling procedures, and the specific protocols required for cleaning patient care areas, surgical suites, and medical equipment storage facilities. His work directly contributed to patient safety and infection prevention, making his role essential to the hospital's mission of providing quality healthcare. Thomas worked the evening shift from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., which was considered one of the most demanding shifts in hospital custodial work. This schedule allowed him to clean most areas after visiting hours had ended, while avoiding interference with critical medical procedures that were typically scheduled during daytime hours. However, the evening shift also meant working during some of the most intense periods of hospital activity: emergency department rush hours, surgical procedures that ran late, and the constant flow of medical emergencies that didn't follow normal business schedules. His responsibilities were extensive and varied. He was responsible for patient rooms, which required not only thorough cleaning, but also careful attention to the emotional needs of patients and their families who were dealing with illness and medical procedures. He cleaned hallways and public areas that saw constant foot traffic from medical staff, patients, visitors, and emergency personnel. He maintained operating rooms and procedure areas that required sterile conditions and specialized cleaning protocols. Perhaps most challenging was his responsibility for the basement storage areas where medical supplies and equipment were kept. These areas required climate control to protect sensitive medical materials, security protocols to prevent theft of valuable equipment, and inventory management to ensure that critical supplies were properly maintained and accessible to medical staff when needed. Mercy General was a 200-bed facility that had been serving the community for over 40 years, growing and evolving along with advances in medical technology and changes in healthcare delivery. The building had undergone several expansions and renovations to accommodate new medical specialties, updated equipment, and changing patient care models. However, the original basement level remained largely unchanged from the hospital's early days: a maze of storage rooms, mechanical areas, and utility spaces that most hospital staff rarely visited, but which were essential to the facility's daily operations. Thomas took pride in his work and understood the vital role that environmental services played in healthcare delivery. He had seen firsthand how proper cleaning and maintenance contributed to patient recovery, how attention to detail could prevent infections, and how the physical environment of a hospital affected both patient outcomes and staff morale. He considered himself part of the healthcare team, contributing to patient care through his commitment to maintaining the highest standards of cleanliness and safety. On the night of October 23rd, Thomas encountered something in the basement storage area that challenged his understanding of what it meant to work in a place dedicated to healing, medical innovation, and the preservation of human life. Thomas was conducting his routine cleaning of basement storage room B12, which housed medical supplies that had been discontinued or replaced by newer equipment. The hospital kept these materials for several years before disposal, partly for regulatory compliance and partly because older equipment sometimes proved useful during supply shortages. As Thomas entered B12 with his cleaning cart, he heard something unexpected: the sound of someone moving around among the stored equipment. This was unusual because the storage areas were typically accessed only during day shifts, and Thomas hadn't seen anyone else in the basement during his rounds. "Hello?" Thomas called out. "Is someone there?" The sound stopped momentarily, then resumed. Thomas followed the sounds deeper into the storage room, weaving between shelves of old medical equipment and boxes of discontinued supplies. In the back corner of the room, he found an elderly man in a white lab coat organizing medical instruments on a makeshift table. The man appeared to be in his 70s, with white hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He was carefully examining various pieces of medical equipment, testing their functionality and making notes on a clipboard. When he noticed Thomas, he looked up with a friendly smile. "Oh, hello there. I'm Dr. Patterson. I'm just going through some of this old equipment to see what might still be useful. We have some wonderful instruments here that shouldn't go to waste." Thomas was confused. He knew most of the hospital staff, particularly those who worked evening hours, and he had never seen Dr. Patterson before. More importantly, basement storage areas were off-limits to medical staff without specific authorization from the hospital administration. "Doctor, I'm not sure you're supposed to be down here. These storage areas are restricted access." Dr. Patterson looked puzzled. "Nonsense, young man. I've been working in this hospital for 35 years. I know every piece of equipment in this building, and I certainly have access to storage areas." Thomas noticed that the medical instruments Dr. Patterson was examining were indeed old, some dating back decades to when medical technology was much different from current standards. The equipment looked like it belonged in a medical museum rather than an active hospital. "Dr. Patterson, what department do you work in?" "Surgery, of course. I'm the Chief of Surgical Services. These instruments represent years of medical advancement, and many of them are superior in design and functionality to some of the modern equipment the hospital is purchasing." Thomas knew that the current Chief of Surgical Services was Dr. Maria Rodriguez, and there was no Dr. Patterson listed among the surgical staff. But the elderly man seemed completely comfortable in the hospital environment and demonstrated obvious knowledge of medical equipment. "I need to check with administration about your access to this area," Thomas said carefully. Dr. Patterson nodded agreeably. "Of course. Tell them that Edward Patterson is reviewing equipment for potential redeployment. They'll understand." Thomas left B12 and immediately called the evening nursing supervisor, Linda Chun, who had worked at Mercy General for over 20 years and knew the history of most hospital staff. "Linda, this is Thomas from Custodial. I have a doctor in basement storage B12 who says he's Dr. Edward Patterson, Chief of Surgical Services." Linda was quiet for a moment. "Thomas, Dr. Edward Patterson was the Chief of Surgical Services, here from 1975 to 1995. He died of a heart attack in 2010, 13 years ago. He was found in his office after hours, going through old medical journals and equipment catalogs." Thomas felt a chill. "Linda, I'm looking right at him. He's organizing old surgical instruments and talking about redeploying equipment. I'll be right down." When Linda arrived in the basement, she and Thomas approached storage room B12 together. The room was empty. No Dr. Patterson, no organized medical instruments, no clipboard with notes. The storage room looked exactly as it should. Shelves of old equipment covered in dust, boxes of discontinued supplies, and no signs of recent activity. Asterisk, asterisk, but on the makeshift table where Dr. Patterson had been working, they found something that made them both pause. Several pieces of vintage surgical equipment had been carefully cleaned and arranged in perfect order. The instruments were old, but functional, organized according to surgical procedure in a way that demonstrated deep medical knowledge. Linda examined the equipment carefully. "These instruments, they're from Dr. Patterson's era. He was known for maintaining older equipment that he believed was superior to newer designs. He always said that medical progress sometimes meant abandoning tools that worked perfectly well." Linda shared what she knew about Dr. Patterson's career at Mercy General. He was legendary among the surgical staff. Brilliant surgeon, but he was also passionate about medical equipment and surgical instruments. He believed that hospitals discarded functional equipment too quickly in favor of newer technologies that weren't necessarily better. After he retired, Dr. Patterson volunteered to help organize and catalog the hospital's historical medical equipment. He spent years going through storage areas, identifying instruments that should be preserved, and documenting the history of surgical advancement at Mercy General. Thomas continued working at Mercy General, but he approached basement storage room B12 differently from that night forward. On several occasions, he heard sounds of someone working in the storage area, equipment being moved, papers being shuffled, the occasional sound of medical instruments being tested. Thomas learned to work around these phantom organization sessions, returning to clean B12 after the sounds had stopped. He consistently found that old medical equipment had been cleaned and organized, arranged according to surgical specialty in ways that reflected deep professional knowledge. The hospital administration became interested in Dr. Patterson's posthumous equipment organization. They discovered that his invisible cataloging work was actually identifying instruments and equipment that could be refurbished and used during supply shortages or donated to medical schools and international relief organizations. Dr. Rodriguez, the current chief of surgical services, reviewed Dr. Patterson's organization work and found it impressively thorough. He's categorizing equipment according to surgical application and historical significance. Some of these instruments are actually superior to modern equivalents for specific procedures. The hospital eventually established the Dr. Edward Patterson Medical Heritage Collection, honoring his contribution to surgical services and his dedication to preserving functional medical equipment. The collection includes instruments that Dr. Patterson had organized during his phantom cataloging sessions. Thomas worked at Mercy General for another 8 years, and he came to see Dr. Patterson's continued presence as a positive aspect of the hospital environment. Dr. Patterson was still serving the medical community, still ensuring that functional equipment wasn't wasted, still contributing to surgical care through his expertise and dedication. Other custodial staff reported similar encounters with Dr. Patterson, always in basement storage areas, always organizing medical equipment with the precision and knowledge of an experienced surgeon. The encounters were never frightening or disruptive. They represented the continuation of medical dedication that transcended retirement and death. When Thomas eventually left Mercy General for a position at another hospital, he made sure to brief his replacement about Dr. Patterson's presence in the basement storage areas. He's still working down there, still organizing equipment, still serving the hospital. Just give him space to do his work and clean up after him when he's finished. The Dr. Patterson encounters became part of hospital folklore, shared among custodial staff as an example of medical dedication that continued beyond life itself. New janitors were taught to respect the phantom organizing sessions and to appreciate the contribution Dr. Patterson continued to make to surgical services. Thomas often reflected on his encounters with Dr. Patterson and concluded that some people are so dedicated to their profession that death cannot interrupt their service. Dr. Patterson had devoted his career to surgical excellence and equipment management, and he was continuing that work in the only way available to him. Medical professionals who heard about Dr. Patterson's posthumous equipment organization expressed admiration for his continued dedication. Surgery was his calling, one doctor observed. Apparently, it still is. The story of Dr. Patterson's continued presence in the basement storage areas became an inspiration to the surgical staff at Mercy General Hospital and medical professionals throughout the region. His posthumous dedication to organizing and preserving functional medical equipment demonstrated that some forms of professional commitment transcend the normal boundaries of employment and mortality. Current surgical staff often sought access to the basement storage areas where Dr. Patterson conducted his phantom organization work, hoping to benefit from his continued expertise in identifying superior medical instruments and equipment. Several surgeons credited encounters with Dr. Patterson's organized equipment, collections with helping them achieve better surgical outcomes and providing access to instruments that proved superior to modern alternatives for specific procedures. The Dr. Edward Patterson Medical Heritage collection eventually expanded to include equipment and instruments from throughout Mercy General Hospital's 40-year history. The collection served educational purposes for medical students, provided backup equipment during supply shortages, and offered opportunities for international medical relief organizations to access functional instruments for use in underserved regions. Dr. Patterson's work continues to save lives. Dr. Rodriguez observed, "The equipment he organizes and preserves provides critical resources that we couldn't access otherwise." His dedication to surgical excellence continues to benefit patients and medical professionals around the world. Thomas writes 12 years of encounters with Dr. Patterson's posthumous medical work provided him with insights into the nature of medical dedication and the way that some healthcare professionals become so identified with their mission of healing that their commitment survives their physical death. He learned that hospitals serve as more than just medical facilities. They become repositories of healing energy and professional dedication that persist beyond the lives of individual healthcare workers. The basement storage areas at Mercy General Hospital became known among staff as places of exceptional organization and efficiency, where critical medical supplies and equipment were maintained in perfect condition and arranged according to principles that reflected decades of surgical experience and medical knowledge. New staff members often reported feeling confident and well prepared when they worked with equipment that Dr. Patterson had organized, as if his expertise and attention to detail had been transferred to the instruments themselves. Dr. Patterson's continuing presence at Mercy General Hospital represented the persistence of medical dedication beyond death, the ongoing mission of healthcare professionals to preserve and improve the tools and resources needed to save lives, and the way that exceptional healthcare workers continue to serve their patients and colleagues even after their formal careers have ended. For Thomas Wright and the other custodial staff at Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Patterson's phantom organization work served as a daily reminder that their custodial responsibilities were part of a larger mission of healing and patient care, that maintaining clean and organized healthcare facilities contributes directly to medical outcomes, and that every aspect of hospital operations deserves the same level of dedication and professionalism that characterized Dr. Patterson's surgical career. Story 3. The office building. Elivatoro Carlos Rodriguez had been working as a night janitor at Metropolitan Plaza for 6 years, building expertise in commercial office building maintenance that required understanding the complex needs of multiple corporate tenants and maintaining professional standards that reflected the prestigious business address. The 30-story office building housed dozens of companies, from small startups with innovative technology solutions to established corporations with decades of history serving clients across various industries. Carlos took pride in maintaining the professional environment that tenants expected when they arrived each morning, understanding that the cleanliness and presentation of their workspace directly affected their business operations and client relationships. Commercial office building custodial work presented unique challenges that differed significantly from other types of janitorial service. The building operated on multiple schedules. Some companies maintained traditional business hours. Others worked extended schedules to accommodate international clients. And some operated around the clock to provide continuous service to their customers. This meant that Carlos had to coordinate his cleaning activities with varying tenant needs while ensuring that all common areas maintained consistent standards throughout the day and night. The building itself was a marvel of modern commercial architecture and engineering. Metropolitan Plaza had been designed to provide premium office space with state-of-the-art infrastructure, advanced security systems, and amenities that attracted high-quality tenants willing to pay premium rents for prestigious business addresses. The lobby featured marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that created an impressive first impression for business visitors. The elevator system was modern and efficient, 6 high-speed elevators that served all 30 floors, with express elevators programmed to provide rapid transportation to the higher floors where the larger corporations maintained their headquarters and executive offices. Carlos's shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., a schedule that allowed him to perform thorough cleaning of all common areas, restrooms, elevator cabs, and tenant spaces that had requested after-hours custodial service. His responsibilities were extensive and required careful coordination with building security, maintenance staff, and tenant representatives, who occasionally worked late hours or arrived early for important business activities. The common areas required daily attention to maintain the professional appearance that tenants expected. This included the lobby, elevator lobbies on each floor, restrooms, conference rooms available for tenant use, and the parking garage that served building occupants. Carlos also provided specialized cleaning services for tenant spaces that required after-hours service, law firms preparing for major cases, accounting firms working during tax season, and consulting companies serving clients in different time zones. Carlos had developed strong working relationships with building management, security personnel, and tenant representatives throughout Metropolitan Plaza. He understood the culture and expectations of each company, knew which areas required special attention, and had earned a reputation for reliability and professionalism that made him a valued member of the building's service team. Metropolitan Plaza was typically quiet during overnight hours, with only security personnel and custodial staff in the building. However, Carlos occasionally encountered employees working late hours, executives arriving early for international conference calls, and service personnel performing maintenance activities that required after-hours scheduling. The building's elevator system was programmed to operate in energy-saving mode during off-peak hours, with reduced service levels and automatic positioning algorithms designed to minimize power consumption while maintaining adequate transportation service for authorized personnel. On the night of December 8th, Carlos encountered something in the elevator system that challenged his understanding of the building where he worked, the people who occupied it during business hours, and the persistence of professional dedication beyond the normal boundaries of employment and life itself. Carlos was cleaning the elevator lobby on the 10th floor when he heard one of the elevators arriving, which was unusual since he was the only person on that floor. The elevator doors opened, and a businessman in a dark suit stepped out, carrying a briefcase and appearing to be in a hurry. "Excuse me," the man said to Carlos. "I'm running late for a meeting. Is the Richardson law firm still located on this floor?" Carlos was confused by the question. Richardson law firm had occupied space on the 10th floor, but they had moved out of the building over 3 years earlier. The space was currently occupied by a technology consulting company. "Sir, Richardson Law moved out of this building in 2020. The space is now occupied by Tech Solutions Consulting." The businessman looked puzzled and checked his watch. "That can't be right. I have a meeting with Mr. Richardson at 2 a.m. regarding the Henderson case." The meeting was scheduled for tonight. Carlos noted that it was currently 1:47 a.m., which seemed like an unusual time for a business meeting, even for a law firm that might work late hours on important cases. "Sir, there are no law firms currently operating in this building during overnight hours. All the offices are closed." The businessman appeared frustrated by this information. "This is very important. The Henderson case goes to trial next week, and we need to review the depositions tonight." Mr. Richardson specifically requested this late meeting to avoid conflicts with his daytime schedule. Carlos decided to help the confused businessman find his way. "Let me check the building directory to see if Richardson Law has moved to a different floor." They walked to the elevator bank together, and Carlos pressed the call button. While they waited, Carlos asked, "What year do you think this is?" The businessman looked at Carlos as if the question was absurd. "It's 1987, of course." "Why would you ask such a strange question?" The elevator arrived, and both Carlos and the businessman stepped inside. Carlos pressed the button for the lobby level, thinking he would help the man contact the building management office to locate Richardson Law Firm's current address. But as soon as the elevator began moving, something extraordinary happened. Instead of descending toward the lobby, the elevator began moving upward, stopping at floors that Carlos knew should be empty. At each stop, the doors opened to reveal busy law offices filled with attorneys, paralegals, and support staff working at full capacity. On the 18th floor, the doors opened to reveal Richardson Law Firm, exactly as the businessman had expected to find it. Mr. Richardson himself was waiting in the hallway, holding a thick file folder and checking his watch. "You're right on time," Mr. Richardson said to the businessman. "The Henderson depositions are ready for review. This is going to be a long night, but we need to be prepared for trial." Carlos watched as the businessman stepped out of the elevator and was greeted by Mr. Richardson. The law firm's offices were bustling with activity. Attorneys reviewing documents, secretaries typing legal briefs, and associates conducting research using law books and legal databases that looked like they were from the 1980s. The elevator doors closed, and Carlos found himself alone again, descending toward the lobby. When the elevator reached the ground floor and the doors opened, Carlos stepped out into the quiet, empty lobby that he expected to find. Carlos immediately called the building's night security supervisor, Mike Torres, to report the unusual elevator experience. "Mike, I think there's something wrong with elevator number 3. It took me to floors that showed active law offices, but those spaces have been occupied by different tenants for years." Mike met Carlos at the elevator bank, and together they rode elevator number 3 to the 18th floor. When the doors opened, they found empty office space that was currently being renovated for a new tenant. No law firm, no busy attorneys, no Mr. Richardson. "Carlos, the 18th floor has been vacant for 6 months. The previous tenant moved out, and the new tenant doesn't start their lease until next month." Mike shared what he knew about the building's history. Richardson Law Firm was indeed located on the 18th floor, but that was back in the 1980s. They were one of the original tenants when Metropolitan Plaza opened in 1985. Mr. Richardson was known for working extremely late hours, often holding meetings well after midnight. The firm disbanded in 1987 after Mr. Richardson died of a heart attack during an all-night preparation session for a major trial. Several of his associates also died in a car accident later that year while driving home from another late-night meeting. Carlos continued working at Metropolitan Plaza, but he approached elevator number 3 differently from that night forward. On several occasions, usually between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., the elevator would take him to floors that showed active business operations from decades earlier. Carlos learned to simply ride the elevator to whatever destination it chose, respectfully observing the phantom business meetings and legal proceedings that seemed to be continuing despite the passage of decades. The encounters were never threatening or disruptive. They represented the continuation of professional dedication that transcended death. Building management became interested in the elevator's unusual behavior. A technician examined the elevator system thoroughly but found no mechanical explanation for why elevator number 3 would stop at floors that hadn't requested service or display destinations that didn't correspond. to current tenant arrangements. The technician did discover something interesting in the elevator's historical service records. Elevator number 3 was Mr. Richardson's preferred elevator. He had a key that allowed him to use express service to the 18th floor, and maintenance records show that he used that elevator more than any other tenant in the building. Carlos eventually realized that elevator number 3 was continuing to serve Mr. Richardson and his associates, providing transportation to business meetings that were still taking place in some form that existed outside normal time. The elevator was fulfilling its function as designed, transporting people to their destinations for important business meetings. Other janitors reported similar experiences with elevator number 3, always during the early morning hours when the building should have been empty. The encounters followed a pattern: business people from the 1980s trying to reach meetings or complete work that had been interrupted by their deaths. Carlos came to see his elevator encounters as a privilege rather than a disturbance. He was witnessing professional dedication that was so strong it survived death, and he was serving people who were still trying to complete important work despite the limitations of their existence. Carlos eventually left Metropolitan Plaza for a position at a larger office complex. He made sure to brief his replacement about elevator number 3's unusual behavior. Sometimes it takes you places you don't expect, but it's always for a good reason. Just be respectful and let it do its job. The elevator continued to serve phantom passengers for several more years, until Metropolitan Plaza underwent a major renovation that included complete replacement of the elevator system. Building management preserved elevator number 3's original control panel as a memorial to Mr. Richardson and the other dedicated professionals who had worked late into the night to serve their clients. Carlos often reflected on his elevator experiences and concluded that some people are so committed to their work that death cannot prevent them from trying to complete their professional responsibilities. Mr. Richardson and his associates were still practicing law, still preparing for trials, still serving their clients in the only way available to them. Legal professionals who heard about the phantom law firm expressed admiration for their continued dedication. The practice of law requires commitment that extends beyond normal business hours, one attorney observed. Apparently, it can extend beyond life itself. The story of Mr. Richardson's phantom law practice became part of Metropolitan Plaza's oral history, shared among building staff and tenants as an example of professional dedication that transcended the normal boundaries of employment and mortality. The elevator encounters served as reminders that some people become so identified with their work that their professional identity persists beyond their physical existence. Building management eventually commissioned a historical study of Metropolitan Plaza's original tenants and discovered that the 1980s had been a period of remarkable professional achievement for many of the companies that occupied the building during its early years. Richardson Law Firm had been among the most successful practices, known for taking on complex cases that other firms avoided and for providing legal services to clients who couldn't afford representation from larger corporate law firms. Mr. Richardson himself had been legendary among the legal community for his willingness to work around the clock when his clients needed him. Court records showed that he had won numerous cases that had been considered hopeless, often through exhaustive research and preparation that required spending entire nights in his office reviewing legal precedents and developing innovative arguments. Mr. Richardson believed that effective legal representation required total dedication. One retired attorney who had known him explained he would work 36-hour days if necessary to ensure that his clients received the best possible defense or advocacy. His death was a tremendous loss to the legal profession and to the many clients who depended on his expertise. The phantom business meetings that Carlos witnessed in elevator number 3 represented the continuation of legal work that had been interrupted by death but remained crucial to the clients, and cases that Mr. Richardson's firm had been handling. The meetings appeared to focus on the same types of complex legal challenges that had characterized the firm's work during their lifetime: difficult cases that required innovative legal strategies and extensive preparation. Current tenants of Metropolitan Plaza occasionally reported encountering business people in the elevators who seemed to be from earlier decades, always professional in appearance and manner, always discussing legal matters or business transactions that seemed to relate to the building's history during the 1980s. These encounters were never threatening or disruptive. They represented the continuation of professional activities that had been central to the building's identity during its most successful period. The elevator system at Metropolitan Plaza underwent several upgrades and modernizations over the years, but elevator number 3 consistently maintained its connection to the phantom law practice. Even after complete replacement of the elevator's mechanical systems and control mechanisms, the encounters with Mr. Richardson and his associates continued, suggesting that the phenomenon was related to the building's history rather than mechanical malfunction. Carlos Rodriguez's 6 years of elevator encounters provided him with unique insights into the nature of professional dedication and the way that some people become so identified with their work that their professional identity survives their physical death. He learned that buildings can serve as repositories of human energy and ambition, preserving the memory and continuing the mission of the people who have worked within their walls. Mr. Richardson taught me that some jobs are more than just ways to earn a living, Carlos reflected. They become callings that define who we are and what we contribute to the world. That kind of dedication doesn't end when a person dies, it continues through whatever means are available. The phantom law practice at Metropolitan Plaza demonstrated that professional excellence and client dedication can transcend the normal limitations of mortality, that the pursuit of justice can continue beyond death, and that some forms of work represent such fundamental expressions of human purpose that they persist regardless of the physical status of the workers involved. Story 4. The University Library. Jennifer Kim had been working as a night custodian at State University's main library for 9 years. University library custodial work presented unique challenges. The building was massive, with 6 floors and over 2 million books, and it served a community of students, faculty, and researchers who often worked unusual hours pursuing their academic goals. Jennifer's shift ran from midnight to 8 a.m., which allowed her to clean the library after it had closed while ensuring that all areas were ready when the library reopened for early morning study sessions. Her responsibilities included all reading areas, study rooms, computer labs, and the special collections area, where rare books and historical documents were housed. The State University Library was over 80 years old, and the building had been expanded and renovated multiple times to accommodate the university's growing collection and changing technology needs. Jennifer appreciated working in an environment dedicated to learning and research, and she took pride in maintaining spaces where important academic work was conducted. On the night of January 19th, Jennifer encountered something in the library's reading areas that challenged her understanding of the relationship between knowledge, learning, and the persistence of human curiosity beyond death. Jennifer was cleaning the 4th floor, which housed the literature and philosophy collections, along with several reading areas that were popular with graduate students and faculty researchers. As she was emptying trash bins and wiping down study tables, she noticed that one of the reading areas was occupied, despite the fact that the library had been closed for several hours. A young woman in her 20s was sitting at a large wooden table, surrounded by stacks of books and taking notes in a notebook. She was completely absorbed in her work, occasionally getting up to retrieve additional books from the nearby shelves. Jennifer approached the reading area carefully. "Excuse me, the library is closed. You need to gather your materials and leave." The young woman looked up from her books and smiled apologetically. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm working on my dissertation, and I lose track of time when I'm researching. I'll pack up and head out." Jennifer watched as the student began collecting her books and papers. Everything seemed normal except for one detail that bothered Jennifer. The books the student was using looked much older than the current editions that should be in circulation. "What are you working on for your dissertation?" The student's face lit up with enthusiasm. "I'm analyzing the influence of classical Greek philosophy on modern educational theory. It's fascinating work, but there are so many primary sources to review, and some of these texts are only available in the original Greek." Jennifer noticed that several of the books on the table were indeed in Greek, with titles and text that she couldn't read. The volumes looked like they were rare editions that should be housed in the special collections area, not available for general circulation. "Are those books from special collections?" The student looked confused by the question. "These are from the regular philosophy collection. I know this section of the library very well. I've been working here almost every night for the past 2 years." Jennifer was puzzled. Graduate students sometimes received extended access privileges, but the library didn't offer overnight access, and rare books weren't available for general checkout. "What's your name? I need to verify your access privileges." "Sarah Mitchell. I'm a doctoral candidate in the philosophy department. Professor Williams is my dissertation advisor." Jennifer knew most of the graduate students who used the library regularly, particularly those who worked during evening hours, but she had never seen Sarah Mitchell before. She also knew the current philosophy department faculty, and there was no Professor Williams among them. "I need to check with the library administration about your access. Can you wait here while I make a call?" Sarah nodded agreeably. "Of course. I'll continue reading while you sort this out." Jennifer went to the main circulation desk and called Dr. Patricia Chun, the head librarian who lived near campus and had given custodial staff her emergency contact information. "Dr. Chun, this is Jennifer from Night Custodial. I have a graduate student on the 4th floor who says she's Sarah Mitchell, working on a philosophy dissertation under Professor Williams." Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment. "Jennifer, Sarah Mitchell was a doctoral candidate here from 1998 to 2002. She was working on a dissertation about Greek philosophy and educational theory. Professor Robert Williams was her advisor, but he retired in 2003. What happened to Sarah Mitchell?" "She died in a car accident in December 2002, just a few weeks before she was scheduled to defend her dissertation. She had been working in the library almost every night for 2 years, often staying well past closing time because the security staff knew she was dedicated to her research." Jennifer felt a chill. "Dr. Chun, I'm looking right at her. She's reading Greek philosophy texts and taking notes for her dissertation. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't approach her again until I arrive." When Dr. Chun arrived at the library, she and Jennifer approached the 4th floor reading area together. The table where Sarah had been working was empty. No books, no notebooks, no signs that anyone had been studying there. But on the table, written in careful handwriting, were several pages of notes about Greek philosophy and educational theory. The notes were sophisticated and detailed, demonstrating advanced knowledge of classical texts and modern academic analysis. Dr. Chun examined the handwritten notes carefully. "This is definitely Sarah's handwriting and her analytical style. She was brilliant, one of the most promising doctoral candidates the philosophy department had ever seen." Dr. Chun shared what she knew about Sarah's academic work. Sarah was passionate about understanding how ancient Greek philosophical concepts could inform modern educational practices. She believed that classical wisdom held solutions to contemporary problems in teaching and learning. She spent countless hours in this library, often working until the early morning hours. The security staff used to joke that Sarah practically lived in the philosophy section. After she died, the department established a memorial scholarship in her name. Jennifer continued working at the university library, but she approached the fourth-floor reading areas differently from that night forward. On several occasions, usually between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., she would find evidence that someone had been conducting research, books arranged for specific topics, notes written in careful handwriting, and signs of dedicated academic work. Jennifer learned to work around these phantom research sessions, allowing Sarah to continue her dissertation work without interference. The notes and research materials that Sarah left behind were always academically valuable, representing insights into Greek philosophy and educational theory that exceeded the quality of most published academic work. Dr. Chen became interested in Sarah's posthumous research and began collecting the handwritten notes that Jennifer found after the phantom study sessions. The notes demonstrated a level of scholarly analysis that surpassed Sarah's original dissertation work, as if her understanding of classical philosophy had continued to develop even after death. Sarah appears to have access to philosophical insights that weren't available to her during her lifetime. Dr. Chun observed, "Her analysis has become more sophisticated, more nuanced. It's as if death has given her a perspective on classical wisdom that enhances her academic work." The philosophy department eventually compiled Sarah's posthumous notes into a scholarly paper that was published in a major academic journal. The paper was attributed to Sarah Mitchell in memoriam, and it received significant attention from classical philosophy scholars around the world. Jennifer worked at the university library for another 6 years, and she came to see Sarah's continued research as an inspiring example of academic dedication that transcended death. Sarah was still learning, still analyzing, still contributing to human understanding of classical wisdom and educational theory. Other custodial staff reported similar encounters with Sarah. Always in the philosophy section, always engaged in serious academic research. The encounters were never disruptive or concerning. They represented the continuation of scholarly pursuit that was too important to be interrupted by mortality. When Jennifer eventually left the university for a position at a public library, she made sure to brief her replacement about Sarah's presence in the fourth-floor reading areas. She's still working on her dissertation, still contributing to philosophical knowledge. Just give her space to continue her research. The university library established a small memorial reading area in honor of Sarah Mitchell, acknowledging her dedication to classical philosophy and educational theory. The memorial doesn't mention her posthumous research, but it recognizes her contribution to academic scholarship. Jennifer often reflected on her encounters with Sarah and concluded that some intellectual curiosity is so strong it survives death. Sarah had devoted her life to understanding classical wisdom, and she was continuing that pursuit in the only way available to her. Academic professionals who heard about Sarah's posthumous research expressed admiration for her continued scholarly dedication. The pursuit of knowledge is a calling that extends beyond the normal boundaries of academic careers, one professor observed. Apparently, it can extend beyond life itself. Sarah's story became an inspiration to graduate students and faculty members who struggled with the pressures of academic life and the challenges of scholarly research. Her dedication to completing her dissertation despite the ultimate obstacle of death demonstrated that intellectual curiosity and the pursuit of truth represent some of the most fundamental aspects of human nature, capable of persisting even beyond the normal boundaries of physical existence. The philosophy department at State University eventually established the Sarah Mitchell Memorial Fellowship for graduate students, conducting research in classical philosophy and educational theory. The fellowship provides funding for students whose research demonstrates the same passion for understanding ancient wisdom and its applications to modern problems that had characterized Sarah's work. Recipients of the Sarah Mitchell Fellowship often reported feeling inspired to pursue their research with greater dedication and deeper insight, particularly when they worked in the fourth-floor reading areas where Sarah continued her studies. Several fellowship recipients credited their encounters with Sarah's intellectual presence with helping them overcome research obstacles and develop breakthrough insights that elevated the quality of their scholarly work. The university libraries collection of classical philosophy and educational theory texts expanded significantly after Sarah's posthumous research began. Librarians discovered that their acquisition suggestions consistently aligned with the sources that Sarah referenced in her continuing work, leading to a collection that became one of the most comprehensive and useful classical philosophy resources in the region. Dr. Chun eventually compiled Sarah's posthumous research notes into a comprehensive, scholarly volume that was published by a major academic press. Bridging Ancient Wisdom and Modern Learning, the continuing research of Sarah Mitchell became required reading in graduate programs across the country and established Sarah as a posthumous authority on the practical applications of classical philosophy to contemporary educational challenges. Jennifer's years of observing Sarah's continued research provided her with a unique perspective on the nature of intellectual pursuit and the power of academic dedication. She came to understand that some forms of human curiosity and scholarly passion are so fundamental to individual identity that they transcend the normal limitations of mortality. Sarah taught me that learning isn't just about earning degrees or completing requirements, Jennifer reflected. It's about understanding truths that can improve human life and sharing that understanding with others. That kind of mission doesn't end when a person dies. It continues through whatever means are available. The fourth floor of the State University library became known among students and faculty as a place of exceptional intellectual energy and inspiration. Graduate students regularly requested access to the reading areas where Sarah conducted her research, and many reported experiencing enhanced focus, deeper insights, and more productive research sessions when they worked in those spaces. Current philosophy graduate students often left small offerings at the reading table where Sarah had been working when Jennifer first encountered her. Fresh flowers, meaningful quotes from classical texts, or handwritten notes expressing gratitude for her continued contribution to philosophical scholarship. These gestures reflected the recognition that Sarah's work continued to benefit the academic community and deserved acknowledgement and appreciation. The story of Sarah Mitchell's posthumous research challenged conventional understanding of what happens to human consciousness and intellectual capacity after death, but it also demonstrated that some aspects of human nature, curiosity, dedication to truth, and the desire to contribute to knowledge, may be so fundamental that they persist beyond the normal boundaries of physical existence. For the academic community at State University and beyond, Sarah's continuing research provided evidence that the pursuit of knowledge represents one of the highest forms of human activity, worthy of respect and support whether it occurs within the normal bounds of academic careers or extends into realms that challenge our understanding of life, death, and the persistence of human consciousness. Jennifer Kim's encounters with Sarah Mitchell over 9 years of night custodial work provided her with insights into the nature of intellectual passion and scholarly dedication that most people never have the opportunity to witness. She learned that some forms of human curiosity are so powerful they can survive death, that the pursuit of truth can transcend the limitations of mortality, and that the university library serves not just as a repository of information, but as a sacred space where the deepest forms of human intellectual activity continue regardless of the physical status of the researchers involved. Story 5. The High School Cafeteria. Robert Martinez had been working as a night custodian at Lincoln High School for 10 years. High school custodial work required understanding the unique dynamics of teenage life, the social pressures, the emotional intensity, and the way that school buildings served as more than just educational facilities, but as community centers where young people formed friendships, faced challenges, and experienced many of their most significant life events. Robert's shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which allowed him to clean the school after all evening activities had concluded, while ensuring that everything was ready for the next school day. His responsibilities included classrooms, hallways, the gymnasium, and the cafeteria, which served over 1,200 students daily and required extensive cleaning and maintenance. Lincoln High School had been serving the community for over 50 years, and the building held the memories of thousands of students who had passed through its halls. Robert appreciated working in an environment that played such an important role in young people's lives, and he took pride in maintaining a clean, safe space for their education and social development. On the night of April 14th, Robert encountered something in the school cafeteria that challenged his understanding of the lasting impact of teenage experiences and the power of social connection to transcend death. Robert was cleaning the cafeteria, which was a large space that could accommodate several hundred students during lunch periods. The cafeteria consisted of a serving area, dining tables arranged throughout the main floor, and a stage area that was used for assemblies and performances. As Robert was mopping the floors and wiping down tables, he heard something unusual coming from the dining area, the sound of teenagers talking and laughing, as if a group of students was having lunch together. This was concerning because the school had been empty for several hours, and there was no explanation for how students could have gotten into a locked building. Robert followed the sounds to the center of the cafeteria, where he saw approximately 6 teenagers sitting at one of the round tables, apparently enjoying lunch together. They were engaged in typical teenage conversation, talking about classes, teachers, social events, and the general drama of high school life. The scene looked completely normal, except for the crucial fact that it was nearly midnight. The school had been locked for hours, and there was no way that students could have gotten into the building without triggering security systems. Robert approached the table carefully. "Excuse me, you can't be here. The school is closed, and you need to leave immediately." The teenagers looked up at Robert with friendly smiles. They appeared to be juniors or seniors, dressed in casual clothing that seemed slightly out of date, but not dramatically so. One of the boys, who seemed to be the leader of the group, stood up politely. "Oh, hey there. We're sorry, we didn't realize how late it had gotten. We were just finishing up our lunch and hanging out for a bit." Robert was confused by their response. "It's midnight. The school has been closed since 8 p.m. How did you get in here?" The teenagers exchanged glances, and for a moment, they looked confused by Robert's question. The girl sitting across from the boy who had spoken up answered, "We always eat lunch here. We've been sitting at this table together every day since sophomore year." Robert noticed that the teenagers had food on the table, sandwiches, chips, sodas, and snacks that looked like typical high school cafeteria lunch items. But the food service had ended hours earlier, and there was no way they could have obtained these items from the closed cafeteria. "Where did you get the food?" Another boy at the table, wearing a letterman jacket, pointed toward the serving area. "From the lunch line, of course. Today's menu was pretty good. Pizza, burgers, and those cookies that everyone likes." Robert looked toward the serving area, which had been cleaned and shut down since early afternoon. All the equipment was turned off, all the food had been stored or discarded, and the service counter was covered with plastic sheeting. "What year are you in school?" The girl who had spoken earlier answered, "We're seniors." We graduate in about 6 weeks. It's crazy to think that our lunch table conversations are almost over. Robert felt an increasingly strange sensation about the entire encounter. What year is it? The teenagers looked at him as if he had asked an odd question. The leader of the group answered, "It's 1995. Why do you ask?" Robert realized he was dealing with something beyond normal experience. It was currently 2023. Nearly 30 years after 1995, he excused himself and immediately called the school principal, Mrs. Sandra Lopez, who had worked at Lincoln High School for over 20 years and would know the history of the school and its students. "Mrs. Lopez, this is Robert from Night Custodial. I have a situation in the cafeteria. There are 6 students having lunch, and they say it's 1995. Mrs. Lopez was quiet for a moment. "Robert, can you describe them?" Robert provided detailed descriptions of the 6 teenagers, noting their clothing, their approximate ages, and their conversation topics. Mrs. Lopez sighed deeply. "Robert, you're describing the group of students who died in the car accident on prom night in 1995. 6 seniors who had been best friends since sophomore year. They always ate lunch together at the same table in the cafeteria. The accident happened on their way home from prom. They had been talking about how their daily lunch conversations were ending with graduation, and how much they would miss seeing each other every day. When Mrs. Lopez arrived at the school, she and Robert approached the cafeteria together. The dining area was empty. No students, no food, no signs that anyone had been eating lunch there, but on the table where the teenagers had been sitting, there were 6 lunch trays arranged exactly as they would have been during a normal school lunch period. The trays contained the remnants of a meal that corresponded to the cafeteria menu from 1995: pizza slices, chocolate chip cookies, and milk cartons with the design that had been used nearly 30 years earlier. Mrs. Lopez stared at the lunch trays for several minutes. This was their table. They sat here every day for 3 years, talking about their classes, their plans for the future, their friendships. It was the center of their social world. Mrs. Lopez shared what she knew about the 6 students and their friendship. They were inseparable. They had formed their friendship group during their sophomore year and had maintained those bonds through the typical changes and drama of high school. Their daily lunch conversations were legendary. They could talk for the entire lunch period about anything and everything. After the accident, other students started leaving flowers and notes on their table. The cafeteria staff eventually had to ask students to stop because the memorial was becoming overwhelming. But that table has always felt different from the others. Robert continued working at Lincoln High School, but he approached the cafeteria differently from that night forward. On several occasions, usually during the early morning hours, he would hear the sounds of teenage conversation and find evidence that the phantom lunch group had been meeting, lunch trays arranged on their table, the lingering sense of cafeteria food, and an atmosphere of friendship and social connection. Robert learned to work around these phantom lunch sessions, allowing the group to continue their conversations without interference. The encounters were always positive, representing friendship, social connection, and the continuation of bonds that had been tragically interrupted by death. The school eventually acknowledged the continuing presence of the 1995 lunch group by placing a small memorial plaque near their table. The plaque read, "In memory of friendship that transcends time. Some bonds are eternal." Students and staff began to recognize the table as a special place in the cafeteria. Current students often reported feeling a sense of friendship and belonging when they sat near the memorial table, and several students credited the area with helping them form their own lasting friendships. Robert worked at Lincoln High School for another 7 years, and he came to see the Phantom Lunch Group as a positive presence in the school environment. They represented the power of teenage friendship and the importance of social connection during the high school years. Other custodial staff reported similar encounters with the lunch group, always gathered around their table, always engaged in the kind of animated conversation that characterized their friendship during their lives. The encounters were never concerning or disruptive. They represented the continuation of social bonds that had been too strong to be broken by tragedy. Asterisk. When Robert eventually retired from custodial work, he made sure to tell his replacement about the special significance of the memorial table in the cafeteria. Sometimes you'll hear them having lunch together, just like they did when they were alive. It's a beautiful thing. Friendship that survives everything. The Phantom Lunch Group became part of Lincoln High School's tradition, representing the enduring power of teenage friendship and the way that schools serve as more than educational institutions. They're places where young people form connections that can last beyond a lifetime. Robert often reflected on his encounters with the lunch group and concluded that some friendships are so strong they transcend death. The 6 students had found in each other the social connection and belonging that every teenager needs, and they were continuing to nurture that friendship in the only way available to them. Education professionals who heard about the Phantom Lunch Group expressed appreciation for their continued presence at Lincoln High School. High school friendships represent some of the most intense social bonds people form, one counselor observed. It makes sense that some of these friendships would continue beyond graduation, and even beyond life itself. The story of the Phantom Lunch Group became part of Lincoln High School's oral tradition, passed down through generations of students, staff, and faculty who understood that the school building held more than just classrooms and educational materials. It contained the emotional history of thousands of young people who had formed their identities, built their friendships, and experienced many of their most significant life events within its walls. Current students often reported feeling a sense of belonging and social connection when they ate lunch near the memorial table. And guidance counselors noted that students who were struggling with social isolation seemed drawn to that area of the cafeteria. Several students credited the atmosphere around the memorial table with helping them overcome shyness, find their friend groups, and develop the social confidence that would serve them throughout their high school experience and beyond. The 6 friends who had died in 1995 had unknowingly created a legacy that extended far beyond their own lives. Their dedication to friendship and social connection continued to inspire new generations of Lincoln High School students to value relationships, support each other through the challenges of adolescence, and understand that the bonds formed during high school could be among the most important relationships of their lives. Teachers and staff members who worked at Lincoln High School during the 1990s often shared stories about the 6 friends and their impact on the school community. They had been students who embodied the positive aspects of teenage social life: loyalty, humor, mutual support, and the ability to maintain close friendships. Despite the typical drama and social pressures of high school, the car accident that had claimed their lives occurred during a time when the entire school community was celebrating their upcoming graduation and looking forward to their futures. The tragedy had affected not just their immediate families, but teachers who had watched them grow from sophomores to seniors, classmates who had shared classes and experiences with them, and younger students who had looked up to them as examples of positive teenage behavior. Robert's encounters with the Phantom Lunch Group represented more than just supernatural phenomena. They were evidence that the strongest human connections can transcend even death, that friendship and social bonds formed during crucial developmental years can persist beyond the normal boundaries of mortality, and that some young people create such positive impact during their lives that their influence continues to benefit others long after they're gone. The memorial table in the Lincoln High School cafeteria serves as a reminder that schools are more than educational. Institutions, they're communities where young people learn, not just academic subjects, but also the social skills, emotional intelligence, and relationship patterns that will shape their adult lives. The 6 friends who continue to meet at their table represent the best of what high school friendships can offer: unconditional support, shared experiences, and bonds that prove stronger than any challenge, including death itself. For Robert Martinez, his decade of encounters with the Phantom Lunch Group provided daily reminders of why his work mattered. He wasn't just cleaning a building, he was maintaining a space where young people formed the relationships that would influence the rest of their lives, where they learned to navigate complex social situations, and where they developed the confidence and social skills that would serve them as adults. The continuing presence of the 6 friends also demonstrated that some aspects of human experience are so fundamental and important that they transcend the normal limitations of physical existence. Friendship, particularly the intense friendships formed during adolescence, represents one of the most powerful forces in human life, capable of providing meaning, support, and joy that can survive even the ultimate separation of death. As Robert eventually retired from his position at Lincoln High School and passed his responsibilities to a new generation of custodial staff, he carried with him the understanding that his work had been part of something larger than building maintenance. He had been the guardian of a space where young people learned some of life's most important lessons about loyalty, friendship, and the power of human connection to overcome any obstacle. The Phantom Lunch Group continues to meet at their table, their conversation and laughter serving as an eternal reminder that the best of human nature, love, friendship, loyalty, and joy, can survive anything, including death itself. Their presence ensures that Lincoln High School remains not just an educational institution, but a place where the power of teenage friendship is honored, celebrated, and preserved for future generations to witness and appreciate. The 5 stories you've heard tonight represent just a small sample of the encounters reported by custodial workers across the world. Similar accounts come from janitors working in every type of building: schools and hospitals, office buildings and universities, community centers and public facilities. The common thread connecting these experiences is not the type of building or the nature of the encounter, but the dedication of the custodial workers who witness these events and continue to maintain the spaces entrusted to their care. These stories remind us that janitors occupy a unique position in our society. They are the guardians of human spaces during the hours when most of us are absent, the protectors of the environments where we work, learn, heal, and grow. Their work ensures that these spaces remain clean, safe, and ready to support human activity. But it also requires them to witness the emotional and spiritual residue that accumulates in places where people have invested their time, energy, and passion. The custodial workers whose stories we've shared tonight approach their unusual encounters with the professionalism that their work demands. They documented what they experienced, treated the phantom occupants with respect, and continued to maintain their buildings with the same dedication they had always shown. But they also came away with a deeper understanding of their role, that custodial work sometimes extends beyond cleaning and maintenance to include serving as witnesses to the persistence of human dedication, creativity, and connection beyond death.